Do you experience pain when walking, standing, or getting up in the morning and you go to put your foot on the floor? Whether that pain is in the arch of your foot, the top of your foot, outside, heel, ball of your foot, or even your toes, that pain in any area of the foot can change the balance of your body and totally have an effect on how you move. Today, we're going to dive into the anatomy of the foot, the causes of foot pain, symptoms of foot pain, what you can do for stretches and exercises and self-care, and also when to see your physician. The foot consists of 26 bones, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, ligaments, and tendons all working together to support you. And what many people don't realize is the position of the foot and the toes can really affect the balance and the alignment throughout the rest of the body. When toes curl, grip, or angled inward due to tight shoes or weakness, it has an effect on the body all the way up the spine in the alignment and the balance. So even though it's in your toes, it can be felt all the way up eventually into your neck and head. To demonstrate this connection, think about when you stub your toe. Notice how it takes a second or two for that pain to really sink in. Well, what happens is the nervous system signals pain and touch very differently at different speeds. The signal for touch, you can feel it right away that, well, you know you stubbed your toe. But the one for pain travels up to your brain. The brain says, ooh, this wasn't good. This really hurts. So then it goes back down into your toe, and then that painful feeling just spreads out and it gets very, very intense. And like I've demonstrated in my shoulder pain video, when there's tension and pain up in here, many times it will travel down into the hand. So everything above the area that's feeling that numbness, pain, or tingling down here can be affected by what's going on up here. And so likewise, if you feel pain, numbness, or tingling in your foot, the cause could be coming from higher up in the leg. Maybe it's radiating into your knee, your hip, your low back. All of those areas can affect it, especially if there's an imbalance. Many times when I've done different techniques on the low back and the pelvic area, down into the hip area, for my clients, they will feel a lot of tingling, tension release. There could be a warmth feeling that goes down in that area as well. And then also, people can come in with very ticklish feet. They'll be like, don't touch my feet. My feet are extremely ticklish. But once I, again, work on that low back and release the tension and the pressure through here, because of the nerve entrapment and the nerve involvement that goes down into the foot, a lot of times their feet will stop tickling, and it makes a big impact for them. Here are some things to look for that tell you when your feet or the structures above are out of balance. The first thing to think about is uneven shoe wear. If you take your shoes, say you have a pair that you wear a lot and you've had for quite a while, hold them up together and have the heel side towards you. And many times you can see there will be a difference in wear. Like one shoe will have the outside of the sole worn down more. So it looks like the shoe has an angle going up, and then maybe the other one is opposite. What that is showing is an imbalance in the body to how your hips and your legs are getting shifted. Another thing to think about is if you turn your shoes on the underneath side so you can look at the soles, you'll notice areas where the tread is worn down more. What that means is those areas where it's worn down more are areas that more of your weight are hitting the ground. The contact hits there first. So many times, especially, it will be worn down more on, say, the right or the left foot. So that gives you an idea. Say there was more wear on the right shoe. That means your body, when you take a step, is putting more pressure on that right side. So it's contacting that ground first, wearing that tread down. Many times, another symptom that goes along with foot pain is pain in the calf and the muscles above in the lower leg. Because the tendons attach to the muscles, which then attach to the bones, they come down, especially on the top of the foot. Some go on the sides of the foot, some goes on the underside of the foot, because that's what allows you to have flexion up and down in your foot. So those muscles have to come through and attach. So when they contract, it brings your foot up. and then the muscles in the back contract, it brings your foot down. So like I say, those connections come through into the foot, and when the muscles above get very, very tight, it pulls on the attachments where those tendons attach to the bones, and it can be very irritating for it. There's also a fairly common condition called plantar fasciitis. It can be extremely painful. I had that a lot when I was younger. It can be debilitating because the pain is so intense. So with that condition is the connective tissue called the plantar fascia underneath the bottom of your foot can get little micro tears in them, especially at the connection where that connective tissue connects to the heel of your foot. You may also experience toe twitches, where your toe just kind of moves back and forth very quickly, and that's also related to the tension in the muscle, the ligaments, and the tendons going on up from the foot on into the leg, and possibly up even into the hip, because that can also be related to major nerves like the sciatic nerves that go down the leg that come from the low back and the pelvic area. Also, if you have ever injured your foot or stubbed your toe, or even maybe broken your foot and you have to have a brace and a cast, since we don't put the weight on that side of the body to avoid, say you've hurt your right side, so instead of putting the weight on it, we don't want to do that. So what our body does to avoid putting that emphasis there or to avoid the pain is our body will shift to the other side. So what this shifting does is it shifts your hip, it shifts your low back, it compensates on up into your neck and shoulders. And so eventually, even though your toe hurts, and this has happened with many of my clients where they had a foot brace, eventually their knee starts hurting, their low back starts hurting, their neck starts hurting, all because of what has stemmed from what has been going on in their foot. Another symptom that I have experienced is if you've been driving in traffic for a long time, and say it's a lot of stop and go traffic, you are constantly bringing your foot on, especially your right foot, on and off that accelerator. And so what that's doing, like I said before, these muscles come down here and they attach into your foot. So if you're constantly doing this with your foot on these trips, eventually that muscle on the side of your lower leg that's allowing for that flexion, that will start to get really sore, and you might get a leg cramp while you're driving in that area especially. Now I'm going to go into the causes of foot pain. One big one is lack of hydration and nutrient deficiencies. Without that water, the connective tissue can't create that glide. Since our body especially is made up of mostly water, that is so important, because when that gets dehydrated and all the tissues dry up and they get sticky, that connective tissue can't glide back and forth. And especially that's one thing with your foot is when you're walking, your foot, that arch goes up and down. So if you are not drinking enough water and this area is getting tight from lack of fluid and lubrication for it to go back and forth, especially at the foot joint, you go to come down on your foot, that connective tissue, that plantar fascia, tries to stretch out, and if there's no water there, it creates those micro tears. So water is extremely important. And what I always recommend to my clients, not just plain water, but electrolyte water that has calcium, magnesium, and potassium, because all three of those are extremely important, not only for muscle contraction, but also for nerve transmission. Sometimes without the correct nutrients, those nerves don't get what they need and they can misfire and cause the muscle to start spazzing, which can cause a lot of problems that way. Also, I've noticed there are a few things that I drink occasionally that do tend to dehydrate me if I don't replace the water when I drink them. A huge one is soda. Soda isn't the best for you, but it's kind of nice to treat yourself every once in a while just to drink one. But the problem with that, it not only dehydrates, you're not drinking the electrolyte water you need, but it also creates an imbalance in those important minerals that I was speaking of earlier for muscles. And so then that can create the spasming. And then also green tea tends to do the same thing. If I drink a lot of green tea and I don't replace it with water, I do notice my skin, I can usually tell it in my fingers. It will start to kind of shrink in a little bit, and then that way I can tell I haven't been drinking enough water or replacing the electrolytes I need. And then also can make me kind of tired. Drinking water does provide more energy because when you get dehydrated, your energy can tend to go down because the body is not getting the fluid it needs for all the various systems to work. Another cause is trigger point and fascial restrictions. It can be down in the foot or it can be up in the leg or even up higher. The thing with the fascia is it is a huge web. It's like the saran wrap in our body that holds everything together. It's around our muscles, it's around our tendons, everything. So when that, like I say, with the other, that gets dehydrated, that's what's being affected. But what can happen is if there's an area that's restricted, say we've had an injury in our hip or an injury up in our neck, and our body has set up that compensation pattern, that scar tissue, instead of lining up like it normally does, allowing movement like it should, what it does is it haphazardly crisscrosses and lays down those fibers in a more of a restricted pattern. So that way the fluid and everything can't get into that connective tissue to help it move and flow like it should. So eventually it becomes dehydrated and becomes sticky. So when you have one area, say your hip right here, you had an injury here, and so that's pulling you down, you can see how the rest of the body, it will compensate all the way down. And sometimes it's interesting because release in the foot maybe have an effect up in the neck. So it is all connected that way. And then as far as the trigger points are hypersensitive areas in muscle that when you press on them, they can stay local and be very sore, or many, many times they refer out to other areas. And so when you release that trigger point, many times that referral pain will come down or be eliminated. Another cause I touched on earlier is nerve impingement. Nerve impingement is a big one because it is what signals and fires the muscle to contract and relax. So if there's an impingement up in this whole area, especially the sciatic nerve, that will definitely affect the foot, the leg, everything. It can be, if it's extremely bad, it can be pretty debilitating and affect a person's daily life quite a bit. So any impingement in any of those nerves up in the higher area will go down and affect the foot. And sometimes there may even be an impingement down in the foot due to that fascial or other restriction that may be in the area. Another cause could be cold and constriction. I don't know if you've ever noticed that maybe your feet, especially if you're flat-footed, can tend to cramp up more and get more sore if you've been walking around a lot on a cold floor, say a wood floor or a tile floor. I grew up in the Midwest, so it got very, very cold in the winter. So when you walked on the floor and that floor was cold, the natural response to that is when you get very cold is your body to tense up. So that's what happens in your foot too. So if you're walking on that cold floor and your foot's tensing up, everything is constricting and pulling everything in, creating possibly more micro tears that I was speaking of earlier. So generally, you want to try to at least have something on your feet when the floor is really cold. There also can be genetic and structural factors. Some people have connective tissue conditions where it either causes their connective tissue to be hypermobile or too restricted. So no matter of massaging the muscle will work because it goes in a deeper layer. Many of the clients I work on, when I work on them, I can tell that there's more to it than just the muscle because there is definitely a connective tissue component. And after speaking with them, many times I find out that they do have some type of condition that will affect the connective tissue. Another cause is poor or unsupportive footwear, especially shoes such as high heels, and if they have the toe area that's very pointed, instead of giving the toes room, it squishes them all into a point. So you have multiple things going on. So especially if you have plantar fasciitis, it can trigger it like crazy. I know sometimes if I've worn heels and I've walked a lot, even in like dressy boots or something like that, and especially if I've done stairs, it is extreme. At the end of the day, when I take those shoes off, it will trigger it very, very bad. So that's a big one to do. If you can avoid wearing high heels as much as possible, but if you do wear a heel, try to at least have enough room in the front so your toes can naturally be positioned the way they're supposed to. Because if you angle those toes in, especially the big toe, what that's doing is it's taking that joint and it's shifting this way. And then you've got this angle, and then the weight of your body is coming down on this joint. So you've angled and you're pushing down into the toes. And so your toe is already angled, so you're pushing into that joint. And what that does is creating a bunion, but it's also creating excess wear on the joint of your big toe. And eventually, if that is really, really sore, it can cause you to start favoring that side. So that way you don't walk like you normally should in an imbalance, because your body has this thing going on with your toe, and your toes are extremely important with the balance of your entire body. Another cause I've noticed with my clients is where their arch sits. If their arch is flat, the bottom of their foot is pretty flat to the floor. And then if they have a high arch, the arch of their foot goes up very high and it's very constricted and tight. So what happens is with the rest of the body is when the foot is flat and there's really no arch there, everything comes inward. The knees come closer together, the legs shift inward, and then the IT bands get very tight because they're actually getting pulled on. Sometimes people think that tension means that it's tight and constricted and everything like that, but many, many times that's not the case. It's because the area is getting pulled out, and then that pull, just like the plantar issue on the bottom of the foot, will pull on the attachments to the joints by the way of the muscles, and the fascia, the IT band right here, will get pulled, and then that's what causes the pain. So you not only with flat feet, you also have the knee issues as well, because there isn't stability in the lower part of the body. And conversely, with the high arch, it does the opposite. It pulls everything back out, and so then you're walking on the outside of your feet, and that creates imbalances too. So that's putting extra tension and pressure on the outside of your foot that the rest of your body has to compensate for all the way up. Now I'm going to demonstrate some great stretches and exercises that can help you with your foot pain. I'm going to demonstrate 2 great stretches for the lower leg that should help with your foot pain due to the connection of the muscle, the tendons, and then connecting to the bones in the foot. The first stretch is going to revolve around stretching out the backside of the leg, the calves, and then the other stretch is going to be involved stretching out the muscles here on the front, which are responsible for that flexion that I spoke about earlier. So what you want to do is, if you have a wall, let's pretend there's a wall here. You have a wall, and then you bring one leg back, and then just take your knee, bend it down, and keep your foot flat. So that way it stretches out the backside of your lower leg. And ideally what you want to do is hold it maybe like for 15-30 seconds. It just depends on how tight your leg is, how long you can hold it. Start slow if it's super tight, and then gradually build up. And to me, it's almost better to do short spurts and do it more often instead of one really long spurt. It could be really tight, especially if you sat for a long time and everything has just become really sticky. So you want to go more careful with it and just go really slow, especially if you have leg cramps and foot cramps. That can tend to aggravate things a little bit too. So what you can do is you can just hold it there. So you're, like I say, against the wall, and then hold it. And then you want to switch sides. You want to remember to do both legs, of course. And then you will notice that one side will probably be more tender and more tight than the other. So that is due to that imbalance and misalignment that I was telling you about earlier, and all the compensation that goes on. So you will usually, especially when you stretch, will feel that imbalance in one or the other. And then if you don't want to use a wall, you can also use a chair. That's why I have the chair here. It's a little short for me, but it's great for demonstration purposes. So if you have a chair, you can put both hands on the chair for stability, because you're just trying to keep everything as straight as possible and go down as much as you can and hold it. I personally like the chair better myself versus the wall, because it's just a matter of where I'm positioning my arms to affect the rest of my body on down. And then the other stretch I was telling you about to affect the sides here is I take it and I take my foot and I rotate it just a little bit outwardly, and then I slowly come down on it, and that stretches all the way up, pretty much that whole muscle up close to my knee, because I have very, very tight muscles on the outsides, so I can feel it quite a bit. So that is a really, really great one to stretch out as well, especially, like I say, if you drive a lot and you're in a lot of stop and go traffic, that muscle will get very tight. Now just stretching both sides of my legs like that, my whole leg is tingling up into my knee even, and down back into my foot. Like I say, how it's all connected. So it will affect all other areas other than just the legs. The next area I want to address is the fascia underneath the foot, that plantar fascia I spoke about earlier. And I have 3 different sizes of balls. The tennis ball here, and then I have 2 spiky balls, and these actually come together when I ordered them. So what's great about these is you could gradually work up to different ones. Say it's extremely tight, you could just start using the tennis ball all the time and not even use these for a while. But if you get to the point that you can feel like you can start working with these, what you might do, start with a tennis ball, then go to the blue ball, and then go into more intense red ball that gets up higher and deeper into the arch. You could either try doing that all in one session, or if you break it up into different sessions, maybe like one day use the tennis ball, next day use the blue ball, next day use the red ball. But the biggest thing you want to remember is always work with your body and don't force it. You can roll it a little bit, but honestly, I would either completely let it sink into the fascia, or maybe slightly roll a little bit and then let it sink, kind of go back and forth and work with it that way, versus just getting in there with the ball and the most intense spiky ball and really getting in there. That could cause actually more intensity and more damage than you really want, and it can also overstimulate the nerves in the foot. So even if you start out just with the tennis ball and you go and you just kind of slowly, and if it's too hard to stand, you can sit and do this. That actually might work better for some people. So that way you can sit and then roll it around. And when you find a sore spot, you can just let it sink in that area and let it sink down into the fascia. And when you do that, I'm actually getting a lot of tingling all underneath. I mean, it's a good tingle underneath the bottom side of my foot. And it's helping release a lot of that restriction in through there. And of course, you want to remember with both sides, same principle as the lower leg. One side will definitely probably be more tight than the other. So you want to stay there a little bit longer. And as you feel different areas of your foot, just kind of work up into that arch and then work to the front, and even the points underneath the ball of the foot and under the heel. And you want to work in various spots and just slowly roll it to the point where you feel the restriction. and then just sink into it. Like I say, sitting might work better for some, so then you're not trying to balance with the other foot. But for demonstration purposes, it's easier for me to show it this way. And remember to go on the outside edge of your foot as well, because there's tendons, ligaments, and muscles and everything that also go in that area that you want to loosen up as well. So you want to do this, say you're doing the tennis ball. I wouldn't do it for a long time. Don't overstimulate the nervous system in your foot at all. So maybe just listen to your body. Maybe work it for maybe 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes or so. And if you can't even handle that, you can start much slower than that. Like I say, work with your body. Don't force anything and let it sink into it. And then as you graduate up, you can do the blue ball. And you will definitely feel a difference between the tennis ball and the blue ball. And same principle. I'm not a big proponent of like really forcing stuff and getting in there and rolling it. It works good for some people, but for a lot of people that I work with, their nervous system is way overstimulated. Their connective tissue is super tight. And to get in there and try to just dig everything out, it does not work well. And it's much more effective if you work with the body and let it sink in and feel for that release and give it some time. Sometimes you just have to have patience with how your body heals and how it lets go of those restrictions. And if you have that patience and you make it so it lets go easier, the relief will last a lot longer versus trying to force something that ends up creating more micro tears that I was speaking about earlier and creating more scar tissue from those tears. So if you go slower, there's a lot less likelihood of that happening, and your body will heal and recover a lot better. And so then if you get to the point that you can use the smaller red ball, that will get into the arch even more so, because that works really well for getting up inside the outside of the arch. And that can be pretty intense as well. Actually, in the spot I'm at, I don't know if you can see it, towards the back side of the arch, it's actually, the feeling is going up into my leg. So vice versa, if there's areas that you go to, trigger points, different things in your leg, it can refer down to your foot. Different areas in your foot can refer up into your leg. It goes back and forth because it's all connected. So you just feel for that. And these balls are great. You can use them on your glutes as well. That can be kind of intense as well. Same principle with a tennis ball. Up in the hip area can help release a lot of that too. So you just gradually movement. I'm getting like I say, all kinds of tingling and everything going on in my feet. And then both of these come together, like I say, as I purchased them earlier. I can show you the link I'll leave the link in the description in case you're interested in getting these, or if you want to just stick with the tennis ball, you're more than welcome to do that because that's very effective as well. Now I'm going to demonstrate some techniques that incorporate trigger point work and myofascial work. Myofascial work helps realign the fibers, like what we were doing on the bottom of the foot, and as I have explained in some of my other videos, that connective tissue gets laid down haphazardly when it gets sticky and tight, and it limits the fluid flow in and out of the area, restricting the movement. So I'm going to be showing here some things you can do not only in the leg, but also in the foot as well to help with those different areas. So the first one I'm going to start with that makes a big difference for me in my foot pain, especially if I start getting some angling on my feet. I do notice by working the muscles towards more higher up in my lower leg, it will actually affect the alignment and the angle of my toes as well because of those attachment sites. So if you remember when we stretched this muscle out here, this is a very, very important one as far as triggering what goes on in the foot, especially down in the toes. So there's a muscle that runs along here. So what you can do, this is a tool that I love to use. It's called the AccuForce 2.5. I'll put the link in the description for that one. And it works very well as far as stripping the fascia and doing trigger point work, especially on the legs. So what I do is I start at the base and I slowly bring it up along that. And you want to start very light. So you want to work, which you call superficial to deep. So you want to work outside to inside. So you just slowly work up and you don't force it and you're very careful with it. And it works if your legs are super dry. What you can do to create a little bit of glide is just use a minimal amount of lotion, because you want the tissue to be engaged. You could even use, if you don't have this, you could even use your fingers. You can start down and then just gradually pull up like that. I demonstrated this technique in my neck pain video. So you just bring it up. And like I say, if you need lotion to increase that glide, I could probably use that a little bit on mine. But it's the same principle. And you can go both ways. You can take your hand and then you can go back down as well. You don't necessarily need the tool. And then what you can do too is you can start working the different trigger points, those hypersensitive spots in the muscles I was telling you about, especially right up here where this muscle attaches at the knee. You can take either the rounded edge of this, or if you have some silverware that has a very rounded edge, or a tool, anything that has this type of edge on it where it's rounded and heavy like that. So you take that and then you go in and you'll feel for those spots in the muscle and you'll slowly sink in. And a lot of times this will refer down into the foot. It's already making my toe kind of twitch, especially this spot in this upper part of this muscle here. So you hold it and you sink in just like everything else. You feel for that change. And honestly, it's actually going up into the outside of my upper leg as well. So you'd be surprised when you hit these referral areas, all the different spots that you start feeling it other ways, which ties into the theory that just because you feel pain in a certain area, it doesn't mean that that's the source of the pain or the cause of what's going on. It could be coming from other areas, partially due to this trigger point referral pattern that goes on. So you hold that for a little bit, maybe 30 seconds or so, slowly sinking in, don't force, and then just gradually keep working down through that muscle to those various points. And again, my toe starts tingling and twitching. So it's interesting how all that affects that area. And it also is opening up even into my ankle. So the ankle is definitely another important part to consider, because if the fascia and everything gets sticky in the ankle, your foot isn't going to flex and move like it should. So when you do that stretching of the fascia down through the leg, you want to make sure you get it down into your ankle. And you could take it all the way down into your foot, because that's what you want to do. And another thing you can do is if you flex your foot and then go down like that, flex your foot and then go down like that, because then you're incorporating movement in order to get that loosened up. And that doesn't just work on this part of the leg. You can do it all the way around. The same principle, the fascia, the stretching it down, or using a tool. If you want to use the tool, that works really good for getting the back of the leg, and then just bringing it up. And then that's another thing. You can stretch it, contract and relax to get those fibers elongated even more. And just doing this, the bottom of my foot is tingling really, really good, which is a good tingle, meaning the nerves and everything are getting to my foot. So this should help a lot. And like I say, if you don't have one of these tools, you can use your fingers, or if you have something that's fairly blunt like this, sometimes people can use what's called a gua sha stone. I've demonstrated that in my sinus relief video. So it's also very narrow, but you can use that as well and bring that up and do some fascial stripping on that as well. And then another thing you can use is, say, down here in between your toes, because when everything gets restricted right here in between your toes and between those ligaments and the joints and the bones, that can also restrict your movement as well. So what you can do is, if you have a piece of silverware or a tool or something with a very blunt end, but it's nice and narrow, so that way these areas between the bones of your toes, the tarsals, metatarsals, that way you can kind of strip up and down between them, go extremely light, because this can be very, very sore, especially if you don't have a blunt enough spoon or piece of silverware or tool that you're using. And then just go up and down, like I say, very carefully. And if you want, you could even take your other hand and engage the tissue here, and then take your tool and just strip down in between your toes. And doing this is actually making my toes tingle. So it's getting that movement and that circulation going in the nerves in the toes. And then once you do that and that gets loosened up, you can take your hands, grab each toe individually, and then shift your foot back and forth. And what that's doing is it's creating like that pump, that lymphatic pump. It's creating that movement in between your toes all the way up into these bones and these joints and these ligaments higher up into the foot. And that works really well. And then of course you can do the same thing especially if you have high arches, as far as working the fascia. You can take your thumbs, take it, and then just pull down, pull outward, and go up into the side of your foot and then into that arch, and just stretch that out with your thumbs. Actually, the thumbs work the best with this. And just stretch all that out. And again, pull it up into your ankle, because you'll feel that tension all around your ankle. And of course, on the outside of the ankle, you want to remember that too. So especially anywhere there are going to be the major joints, you want to make sure to get in there around the attachments and loosen that up really, really well. So with a combination of all that, that should help a lot as far as loosening things up. Like I say, it's made everything tingle just with the little bit that I have done. And you want to make sure to do that on both sides. And then also another thing that I like using that works for me, especially if I haven't been good in wearing shoes I shouldn't and my toe gets angled in. So I will start getting very, very sore on the joint of my big toe on this side. But like I say, by loosening these muscles up in here, that will also affect the tension on the toes. But I also like to use what's called, these are my yoga toes. You can also use for in between the toes to spread them out and to stretch them out. You can either use like bunched up paper towel, lots of paper towel in between your toes, or you can also use those different toe separators that they use for painting your toenails. You can use that. I personally love these because it creates a nice big space in between my toes and really stretches them out. So you can put it in and it keeps them evenly spaced. So you just go between toe. And the last one, that little one, is the hardest. So it will create a lot of space in between your toes. So you can put both of it, and you'd be surprised how much by separating your toes like this, just like that, you will feel tension release all the way up into your lower leg. Like I say, it's connected. The feet affect the legs affect the feet. So what you do to one, you will definitely feel a difference in the other. And so when I have these on, I don't do them for a long time because it can be kind of overstretched after a while, especially on the outside here. But I will do it for maybe, I don't know, 5-10 minutes at the most, maybe. But because it holds everything so stationary and so firmly, and it really stretches that all out, it really makes a big difference. So you don't need to do it for a long time at all. So it's very effective. And like I say, with these as well, I'll put the link in the descriptions. But if you don't have these, you can use the toe separators too. So between this and the myofascial work that I just showed you, the trigger point work, that should benefit a lot as well. The last and one of the most important exercises that you can do is walking. I touched on earlier about how important fluid is in the body, and you need that movement. The lymphatic system operates with movement as its pump. So without moving, you may have noticed when you've sat for a long time, maybe you start getting some swelling in your lower legs. When you don't get up and move around, your body just becomes compressed and sticky because it doesn't have that movement, that pump action, getting fluid into your tissues, so everything can become a lot stickier. Another huge recommendation I like to do and recommend to my clients is drink quite a bit of electrolyte water before you start walking, because that way, as the pump's moving, you have fluid in your system, and that walking will help the fluid you just drank and the electrolytes get into all your tissues where it needs to be. So now I'll recommend some additional self-care things you can do that has not only helped me, but some of my clients as well. The first thing to remember is that our whole body is integrated. So you don't want to just think of the foot in isolation. You want to maybe stand in front of the mirror and look at the level of your shoulders, look at the level of your hips. Many times one will be higher than the other, or there'll be a rotation. Maybe your right shoulder's more forward than the other one. So of course that twisting, I can feel it all the way down in my right foot compensating for that movement. So you want to keep that in mind. And there's 2 videos I did that are excellent as far as stretching out the front of the body and getting movement in the core areas. One is the shoulder pain video. What that one does is it opens everything up here. It has some great stretches and exercises for that. And then also my knee pain video, which goes great with foot pain. If it has gotten to progress that far where it's traveled up your leg, you might be experiencing the knee pain. So I will link both of those in the description and at the end of the video. Another very important consideration is the importance of vitamins and minerals. I touched on it when I spoke about the electrolyte water and the importance of magnesium, potassium, and calcium. And if you are low in those, you will start getting spasms, twitching, pain. Maybe your joints will hurt worse. So those are very important, very basic foundational things to have in your system. Obviously, if you have medical conditions where calcium and different things are issues, that's something to consider and speak about with your physician. But in general, those are extremely important. And there's a specific magnesium type I use called magnesium glycinate. It's highly absorbable, and I do so much better with that than I do the other magnesiums, such as magnesium citrate. It does a lot. I take it especially before I go to bed at night. And if my muscles have been really tight from working hard all day and my nervous system just feels a little off, I will take that. And what it does is it not only relaxes the muscles, but what it does is it calms the nervous system, which also has an effect on the muscles. And I notice a difference before I go to bed at night. I will feel a lot more chill and a lot more relaxed. And there's a specific brand that I really like. I'll put the link in the description. If it's something you want to check out, you're welcome to do that. There's also something else that has helped me a lot. Say I did wear heels and I did a lot of stairs, or I've walked around on the floor that was cold and I stood for too long on the floor at home. and I start getting those spasms and those cramps really bad, and they're so intense, I just want to find something to make it stop. I found a homeopathic style of dissolvable tablet that I can take one or two of. And if I drink a lot of electrolyte water with that, and I take that, it's called Highland's leg cramp tablets. I'll put the description and also in the link for that as well. But that has been a game changer for me sometimes when things get so intense and then I need relief really fast. As far as footwear and insoles, one of the biggest things you want to do is don't wear high heels as much as possible if you can. I know they look great, but they are not good on the body whatsoever, especially a really, really high heel and a very pointy toe, because everything compresses and angles and it imbalances your whole body all the way up. And you want to remember to find footwear that's supportive of your whole foot, has plenty of room for everything to move around depending on your arch type, whether you're a flat arch or high arch. Just try different ones out that feel comfortable for you and walk around in them. And notice not only how it feels on your feet, but maybe look in the mirror and notice how it's affecting the rest of your body. Where are your knees? Are your knees coming together more? Is the pressure coming more on the heel? Is it coming more on the outside? So by noticing these things, you don't want a shoe that's going to start shifting poorly everything on up in your body, because it'll just create more foot pain and more imbalance, because then, especially if one foot hurts more than the other, then that will create problems on down the way. I personally don't have a recommendation for a specific shoe in mind. Like I said before, just try different ones out, notice the shift and everything, what it's doing. But I do have a specific insole that I like because I am on my feet all day. And I notice when I use it, I tend to have a lot more energy because it's creating more of a stability and centering my foot more over my shoe. So that way I don't shift as much and I have a pretty firm foundation, because when I do massage, I'm using my core, I'm using my legs, it's going all the way down to my feet. And if my feet don't have a firm foundation, it affects my strength, it affects my energy. I'm more tired, and by the end of the day, I can start having pain in my hips, pain in my low back. So for me, having the right insole makes a huge difference. I personally have one here, as you can see, is very worn, because they last a long time. You get the right one. This is a higher quality type of insole. Again, I'll put the link in the description if you're interested. But what I like about it, because I'm flat-footed, it has that nice arch for it. These are actually specifically for people with plantar problems where it's flat. So it has this nice arch. You see it in the camera here. But it also has extra support. I believe there are wires or some type of plastic through there that works really well. And then what I like about it too is this cushion on the heel, because I work on a very hard floor. So that cushion provides a little extra comfort for me, because there is so much pressure that comes down on your heel, because that's where your whole body weight is transferred to first, is down into your heel. So you want something under there that is going to provide that cushion. And so that way the bone, the ligaments and tendons, everything aren't getting completely smooshed down to a hard floor, especially if you work on tile, concrete, or anything like that during the day. Even at home, when I've been standing a lot, maybe I'm cleaning something or doing some type of task and I'm standing in one spot for a long time, or I'm walking around on a hard floor and the floor is cold, I will tend to get very sore. I'll start getting leg cramps. They'll go down my feet. So I will even wear shoes and insoles on my feet at home. And that makes a huge difference also at home in the difference between my energy level and in my pain level. I don't end up with that pain in my hips and the low back as if when I'm walking barefoot. If your foot pain is severe and it comes with numbness, swelling, and redness, you want to make sure to get that checked out by a physician, because it could possibly be linked to diabetes or some type of nerve impingement on up higher in the spine and in the body. So you want to make sure to get that checked out. And then also, someone that could really help you a lot as well as a podiatrist. Podiatrists are great because they specialize in the foot and the foot conditions and how the foot contacts the ground and how that sits. So sometimes I'm sure you've heard that different people have gotten orthotics or something like that. But another benefit, for example, that I have noticed with a client that I've worked on, he came in and he had a lot of low back issues, pain in his hip that it just wouldn't go away, kept coming back, kept coming back. And so I asked him, I noticed there was a slight difference in his leg. And he said, yeah, I had surgery there. And unfortunately, with the surgery, it shortened my leg just a little bit. So that difference in the shortness of his leg was throwing his body off. So say this was his short side of his leg, your body is going to lean to that side because you don't have that length to balance it out with the other. So what I told him is many times the podiatrist can put some type of sole in it to bring that elevation up, so that way it brings your leg up, and that way then your hips will level out, and then that should help his low back and his hip pain. Everything I share is for educational and informational purposes only. I'm not a doctor, so if you had things going on in your body, you definitely want to get it checked out by a physician. If this information has been helpful for you, let me know in the comments, and feel free to like, subscribe, and share this video with friends and family who you know that may be suffering from foot pain as well. And remember to stay tuned for more self-care tips.